Today, the government is announcing the biggest shake-up to local government since 1989. Local government is hugely important to our economy. Council plans dictate where you can build, what you can build, and how you build it. Our failed planning system has produced a housing market where house prices rose faster than any other OECD country between 2000 and 2022. Councils and their elected members shape the places we live, the local services we rely on, and make decisions that affect our everyday lives. The government does not think that local government is currently serving New Zealanders well. Local government is meant to serve communities, not confuse them. But right now, the system is tangled in duplication, disagreements, and decisions that defy common sense. The government's belief is that local government has lost the social licence and that New Zealanders have lost faith in local government. This is borne out by the fact that over half don't bother to vote in local elections. We have thought hard about what to do about this in central government. In a couple of weeks, we will introduce our resource management reforms to Parliament. Our new planning system is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to set New Zealand on the path to economic growth that lifts our living standards and protects the environment. The resource management reforms will strip out duplication in the system, standardise processes, and drive down complexity and compliance costs. Under the new planning system, there will be fewer plans, there will be fewer consent categories, and there will be fewer consents required overall. Environmental enforcement and monitoring is expected to eventually be centralised and taken off regional councils. Regional councils will have a significantly reduced role as part of this new planning system. With this context, we have decided to take the opportunity to tackle the problem of local government at the same time. The current structure of local government is no longer fit for purpose, and I think that is widely accepted across the political spectrum and indeed across New Zealand communities. There are too many layers for too little work, there is confusion, and as I say, there is the erosion of social licence. That's why the time has come for a reset. Today, we are announcing our proposal to replace regional councillors and force local authorities to develop plans to run their regions more efficiently and effectively. The status quo is not an option. Kiwis deserve better. I'll now hand over to Simon to run through some more detail.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, and good afternoon. Ratepayers deserve a system that works for them, not one bogged down by unnecessary layers of bureaucracy. Currently, most regions have two sets of councillors, regional and city or district, which creates duplication and confusion. Our proposal replaces regional councillors with a combined territories board made up of mayors who Kiwis who have already elected. By removing regional councils, we can cut duplication, reduce costs, and streamline decision making. People often know their mayor, but few know their regional council chair. By putting mayors in charge of regional decisions, it will mean more efficient services, greater accountability, and driving smarter use of ratepayer funds. Combined territories boards will make decisions using a fair and balanced voting system. This ensures that both urban and rural interests are represented in critical decisions about land and water. But the real change comes with the regional reorganisation plans. Every region will be required to develop a plan that sets out how councils can work together to deliver services more effectively and efficiently. These plans will be shaped by local context, informed by public consultation, and assessed against clear national criteria. The plans will be tested against this clear criteria. They must support national priorities like housing and infrastructure, offer financially responsible arrangements that keeps rates manageable, and deliver better services at lower cost. These plans will be locally led and approved by the Minister for Local Government to ensure that our expectations for efficiency and effectiveness have been met. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It is a framework for regions to design what works best for them with clear expectations that the outcome must be better than what exists today. The proposals that we are making today are about delivering a leaner, smarter local government that puts communities first. Crucially, it is also not about centralising power. This is about empowering local leaders to lead their own reform. This government is about creating opportunities for faster and clearer decisions at the local level. We want to redirect resources to the things that really matter for New Zealanders: service delivery and infrastructure. By driving this change, we are cutting down costs which will benefit ratepayers. And with that, I'll hand back to Chris.
Kiwis deserve a local government that works for them and not against them. We are proposing to replace complexity with one clear system that unites local and regional decision making. When mayors are accountable for regional outcomes, councils stop competing and start collaborating on what matters most: transport, infrastructure and the environment. Scrapping regional councillors would mean fewer layers of bureaucracy for ratepayers to fund, clearer leadership and decisions made by people who know their communities best. That is accountability. We're also forcing councils to make plans for their own wider reforms by finding smarter ways of working together, sharing back office services, for example, joint agencies for roading and recycling, cutting duplication, could unlock economies of scale and make ratepayer dollars go further. So where to from here? We're seeking the public's feedback on these proposals. Whether they support it, oppose it, or want to suggest improvements, their views will help shape the final decisions. Consultation opens today and is open to everyone, and it's open until 20th of February 2026 next year. In March, the government intends to make decisions on final proposals, including any reallocation of regional council functions, so that legislation can be drafted. We then intend to introduce legislation around the middle of next year. New Zealand's institutions have to modernise with the rest of the country, and local government is no different. I think it would be fair to say that the system is out of date and heaving under its own weight. It's confusing and duplicative, costing ratepayers too much, too often. New Zealanders deserve clarity, coherence and cost effectiveness from local authorities, and the government is confident these proposals deliver on those objectives. With that, happy to take your questions.
How many combined boards do you envisage?
Well, that will ultimately be, in terms of the combined territories boards, so all of the existing local authorities that make up the regions that aren't already unitary authorities will be, the proposal is that they would form into a combined territories board.
So you're not abolishing
11.
So you're not abolishing
11, yeah, the number is 11
So
once
it
you...
stays 11. So the 11 regional councils now.
Yes,
will be 11
and you've got Auckland as a kind of special case.
So you're not abolishing regional councils, just the top, the democratic layer of governance at regional councils. The regional councils, the shareholdings they have, the functions that they do, you're changing the functions, but they stay.
It's a two-stage proposal. So the first is to abolish the elected layer of regional council laws and essentially have a board of mayors that we've been calling a combined, or we will be calling a combined territories board, to take on the functions of the existing regional councils. So regional councils do a whole range of things that someone in the system has to do, okay, from environmental management, monitoring, from running of public transport. They have shareholdings in a range of ports, for example, which is why this is essentially a market-sensitive briefing. So there's a range of things that regional councils do, and so the combined territories board, the board of mayors, would take over those functions, and then the second step is to the regional reorganisation plans, which may in time result in essentially more unitary authorities.
So that second proposal, would you're nudging very strongly in the direction of shifting New Zealand, the places that are not already unitary authorities, into more unitary authorities?
We've got an open mind as to how that goes, but it is definitely fair to say that there is quite a strong lobby out there for more unitary authorities where you have one layer of governance, one elected set of councillors who are responsible for all of the things that happen both at a city and a regional level. And once you see our resource management reforms in a couple of weeks, you will see, with greater standardisation, a spatial plan over a region, fewer plans more generally, fewer consents required. You will see, people will see the attraction of unitary authorities.
So on the democratic part of this, you said there'd be some balance, because so South Wairarapa and Wellington both have mayors. Wellington City has about 17 times more people than South Wairarapa. You're saying, but there wouldn't just be a bit in there would have 17 times more votes.
Correct.
There'd be some balance. What would that balance be? And
So,
the one person would vote?
so a couple of things there. I mean, and you'll see in the proposal document, if you do it on a purely one mayor, one vote basis, there are issues with that. But if you also do it on a population basis, the Mayor of Wellington would immediately have more power than almost every other council combined. So we're proposing essentially a blend in which population base is the starting point, balanced by this concept of effective representation, which is what the Local Government Commission has to do already when it comes to local government voting plans. So we would have them, empower them to make those decisions. On resource management, which is a real area of complexity, our proposal is essentially a double majority. So you need a majority of the population-based votes, but you also need a majority of the constituent councils, constituent councils in a region, which means that rural and urban interests can be balanced. And that's really important for resource management reform in particular.
Can you clarify on that population point? So 17 times, so it was just pure.
Yes.
Where would you see it being more like?
Well,
How many votes?
I don't want to prejudge where the Local Government Commission will get to on that, but it is clear that if you just do things on a pure population basis, you are just centralising power to the biggest cities, which is not the intention of the reforms. There needs to be a balance between rural and urban, and making sure that smaller councils and people who live in smaller parts of New Zealand, who are very important, have a say in what happens at a regional level.
Is it fair that someone living in Berrenport has their vote been diluted and worth less than someone living in Masterton?
I mean, in a funny way, that is the status quo at the moment. I mean, there are all sorts of things that the Local Government Commission and that councils do to go through to make sure that people have a fair and balanced view of representation. So with all these things, it's about finding the balance.
You mentioned that urban and rural interests will be represented. What about iwi? How will they be represented on these boards?
Well, any existing treaty settlement, of which there are many that involve regional councils, will be carried through into the new system. So we're not proposing to get rid of existing Crown treaty obligations in relation to that. But there's no mandatory role for iwi representation on the combined territories boards.
Why not?
Well, because the government's view is that we don't agree with separate representation in that regard. So we are proposing to essentially have elected mayors who are elected by New Zealanders to govern these combined territories boards.
Have you had any advice on possible legal action based on that?
No, but I'm sure we'll get some if that's required.
How confident are you that mayors can take on this extra responsibility?
Well, look, we've heard very loud and clear that the current model of bureaucracy is causing a major burden around decision making by mayors. Our expectation is that putting mayors in the driving seat to be able to make these decisions which affect their regions is actually going to be something that they absolutely are going to take up and will be enthusiastic about. And the reality is for communities, communities know who their mayor is, and the fact that they are now going to be also dealing and involved with regional decision making is a positive aspect. We've got 2 layers currently under the status quo. And that additional layer is adding bureaucracy and cost, and we're simply looking to, remove that through the restructure that we're doing, and that means that power will go to the mayor.
It's quite common. Sorry, just on that. It's quite common in local government land to have people say, "Look, just put the mayors in charge of the regional council functions." That there's actually, from my read of the local government landscape, is there's quite a bit of support. People just say, "Look, mayors are the ones who are directly elected. They've got a strong mandate. They know they're often quite well known, which does make a difference." So out there, a lot of people have already suggested this model. And then, of course, you get the backbiting and the infighting that sometimes happens between regional councils and local councils, city and district councils, in which both sides blame each other, which is infuriating for ratepayers when councils just essentially blame each other.
What sort of impact do you think this will have on rates?
Sorry?
What sort of impact do you think this will have on rates?
It will put downward pressure on rates, and that's one of the aims of the reforms. Ultimately by removing a layer of duplication and bureaucracy that takes cost out of the system. Exactly what that looks like is a bit down the track, right? So these are A, proposals, and B, if they go ahead, there'll be a regional reorganisation plan that will improve economies of scale and lead to less cost. Also important to view it in the context of resource management reforms, which are going to strip cost out of the system. There's just no doubt about that, because there are going to be fewer consent categories, fewer consents overall, more standardised processes, and greater use of digitisation, for example, when it comes to plans, which means we won't have different councils all using different planning devices and different planning technologies. That will strip cost out of the system.
Environmental regulation away from regional councils, and you do that before the mayors are installed?
One of the proposals through resource management reform is to centralise environmental enforcement and monitoring away from regional councils. So regional councils are responsible at the moment for both regional environmental planning, but they're also responsible for enforcement and monitoring. And one of the proposals through resource management is that regional councils, or a regional layer, will be responsible for the setting of environmental limits, for example, and environmental management, but the enforcement would be done separately by a centralised, essentially central government body. There may be a regionalised component of that, but it would be a centralised body, and it takes, and actually, that is actually one of the benefits of the reforms, because it separates out the management from the enforcement, which is important.
I think, sorry, just on the question around cost, if you look at the broader local government system, there's about 40,000 people operating within the broader system. Regional councils account for around 4,000. So you're looking at about 10% of the broader base. And I think the point that Minister Bishop's making in terms of the context of the future state of local government in terms of what they do is very different to the status quo. And the activity that will in effect be removed as a result of RMA reform will correlate in terms of who does what and what that looks like.
How contested is the rate capping proposal on councils, voluntarily choosing to streamline and reduce,
well, we'll be having more to say in regards to the rate capping proposal in the coming weeks, but it'd be fair to say that as Minister for Local Government, having been involved in the drafting of both of these, then I've taken that into consideration.
Do they link? So can you explain at all how they...
Well, I'll be giving... today's not an announcement on the rates capping. That'll be coming in due course, but those considerations have been made.
On the timeline, you've talked about the legislation being introduced by the middle of next year. Will you have time to pass it before the election?
Well, let's wait and see. So the proposal's out now. We'll get feedback into February, make decisions in March next year. It takes time to draft legislation. It is. We'll just flag up now. It will be if we do decide to go ahead with it, it will be a complicated piece of legislation, and people would expect that, and so we would seek to introduce it to the Parliament and it would have to go to a select committee. So you just work backwards from when the election day. I'm not announcing that, and I don't know, but it'll be around this time in a year. So it'll be tricky to pass before the election. On the other hand, and so we seek to introduce legislation and then pass it kind of 2027, and that correlates with resource management reform anyway, because our aim is to have resource management legislation done by the time of the election, but the implementation of that is, phased over the next couple of years after that as well.
How would that look? Why would the phased implementation look?
Well, we'll wait and see when we do the resource management reforms in very shortly. But you can't just pass a piece of legislation and have resource management come into effect immediately. There's a layer of national direction, these national instruments that have to be drafted that make the system work properly. Now, we already have some of that, so some of that will port into the new system, but one of the aims of the reforms is to bring greater coherence and a simpler, more concise form of national direction. There's a bit of time to do that, and then the new council plans, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself with the announcement, but the new council plans that will come as a result of resource management will take some time to draft as well, and obviously central government will be helping along the way there through standardised zones and things like that. So there's a bit of complexity and detail to work through as a result of resource management, but the reason we're announcing this today is it's a separate announcement from resource management, but it's also linked in the sense that we want to make sure that these reforms are essentially complementary to each other, and they've been designed, as Minister Watts says, they've been designed as a package, so that as we go forward into the next 2, 3, 4 years, people can see them going through the legislative process and the regulatory process as a package.
So in the mix there, we also have a sort of super planning ministry. Are you going to put housing, transport and environment together in order to be that national regulator like you talked about?
No decisions have been made around that. Obviously, that's an idea that's been kicking around for some time. No decisions have been made around that. We're not making an announcement around that today. But what I would say is that the way in which central government interacts with local government is bad and completely suboptimal. Local government really matters to New Zealand. You know, the function of the housing market, which is largely driven by council plans and rules and zoning, really matters fiscally to the government. It matters economically from a productivity point of view and the performance of our cities, and it really matters. And we have not been good custodians of the importance of local government and central government, and we have not been joined up enough around looking at council plans, looking at zoning, look at the infrastructure and transport requirements, and looking at all of the bits of the jigsaw that fit together. So, but we haven't made any decisions around that.
When it comes to the plans, when it comes to the plans you want to see from mayors, the combined territory plans, are you using the sort of local water done well model here, where you'll be setting national standards, like you say, they'll have to meet certain criteria in their plans, and they'll get like a pass-fail? And what are some of the criteria you imagine will be there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about the regional reorganisation plan. So assuming that bill is put into the House midway through next year, it's in effect probably legislated in mid-27, taking into account the House shutdown pending election. Then we're looking at a period of 2 years for those regional reorganisation plans to be put in place. The criteria and assessment, and you're right, we have taken the learnings from local water done well. If you think about context around financial sustainability, for example, and other measures like that, those points of criteria will be considered as part of the consultation, but we have put thought to that already. And at that point, they will be reviewed by the local government minister in order to assess them either meeting or not meeting the criteria, and then putting those into place. So similar timeline with...
Will you be nudging amalgamation through that process? And what, I mean, how do you avoid what happened with local water done well, where in some cases local politics did end up dominating the conversation, and efforts to amalgamate were therefore separated?
I think, as Minister Bishop noted before, there has been quite a significant lot of talk about amalgamations over the last decade. And with the exception of the Auckland model, we have had none. And so what we are creating, in effect, through the regional organisation plans is a mechanism and a framework that, should a region and a grouping of mayors determine that that is the most efficient mechanism in order to execute the activities that are required, then that is therefore a pathway open to them. So it is a much more efficient model, actually, in practice than what exists today.
I agree. So our expectation is that some regions will jump at this opportunity. I have had local councillors and mayors say to me, you just got to make us do this. It will never happen bottom up, no matter how crazy we think the current system is. It's just too hard for local government to get it over the line themselves. They actually want central government to provide leadership, and that's what we're doing. So the constituent parts, exactly how it looks in practice, that'll be locally led, but the clear tram lines around what central government expects, that's in the hands of central government and in the hands of the Minister of Local Government.
Do you expect that this will strengthen local democracy?
Yes.
But you've talked about, obviously, public losing faith in local government and point to the turnout at local body elections. Of course, Auckland has the worst turnout. Of course, turnout has fallen ever since the 1989 reforms.
Yeah, well, our expectation is that this will lift the capacity and the capability and quality of local government over time, and it will start to restore people's faith in local government. That's our view and our objective as part of one of the objectives of these reforms, and we're laying it out, and it'll be over to people to have their say around it.
We've just had the local elections where you've had regional councils that have been democratically elected for the next 3 years. Can you guarantee those councillors that they will be allowed to serve out that 3-year term that they've been elected for?
Can't give you that guarantee. It's an option that we'll be considering feedback on over the next few months as people respond to the reforms. The feedback is open until the 20th of February. Obviously, there have been elected regional councillors, and the proposal is to disestablish those roles. One option is that they continue to serve out their term until 2028. One option is that once the combined territories boards take effect, whenever that shall be, then that layer of elected councillors are abolished.
But is that democratically fair that, that they've been elected for a 3-year term, and effectively your proposal is to take away some of that mandate that they've received from voters?
Well, our overriding objective with this is to make sure that we get local government that's fit for purpose and fit for the 21st century. There have been various different attempts and different proposals over the last 20 or 30 years or so to reform local government. I think most New Zealanders, fair-minded people, look at our current system and realise that it is not fit for purpose and that we need change. This government is gripping up that and making sure that we put forward proposals on the table that actually drive big change for local government. I think that's what New Zealanders want, and that's what we were elected to do, and we're getting on with it.
Given how long you have before the election on this, why haven't you consulted Labour? And separately, are you confident that your coalition partners are totally on board with this as well?
This is a government cabinet decision, so it's gone through cabinet, and it's a government policy document and government consultation process. We are consulting with everybody, and last time I looked, the Labor Party are part of the ecosystem, so they'll get a chance to have their say.
But why not approach them earlier, given this is such a change, and it will be going up against the election, and for it to be there, you probably want.
Well, look, the reality is, in the context of Tangi Takiri as my offsider on local government, the market sensitivity announcement, but we'll be having a conversation and working through the detail. I think it is important in the context of local government that we have enduring reform, but that's why importantly we've signalled clearly we want to consult, and we're starting to consult today, and that's for everyone.
Obviously, this is a proposal. This is not a decision that's been made yet. At that next stage, where you turn the proposal into actual government action, will your cabinet once again have a chance to say no on this? Is there a chance that New Zealand First will act to approve it?
Any further decisions in relation to the proposal will go through the cabinet process. So there'll be many opportunities for the public to have their say and other political parties to have their say on it. But this is a government proposal document or series of proposals that we're interested in people's feedback on. But as I say again, that the status quo is not acceptable and not an option. So there is going to have to be change.
From a ratepayer's perspective, how does...
Oh, sorry.
Power grab when you have a proposal here to give the Crown observers positions on these territorial boards?
That's an option. So there's a range of proposals in there. The government's preference is that mayors take on the responsibilities of regional councils through essentially the board of mayors, who are of course locally elected. But there's a suite of different options in the document around with varying levels of intervention from Crown observers or Crown commissioners, I think we've called them in the document, through to having voting rights or not having voting rights. And that's one of the reasons why we're consulting, is we genuinely want to see what the mood of New Zealanders is on that.
Party might have called this a power grab, is that fair?
Well, I'm not sure they've even read the document yet, so it's good that they've come out opposed to it without having bothered to read it. It's not a power grab. This is about making local government fit for purpose and delivering value for ratepayers and ultimately for New Zealanders.
Under Proposal 2, is it possible for these boards, the regional representation decisions, is it possible to decide to return to the status quo of a regional council with elected councillors, or must they move to a new model? They'll
be assessed against the criteria that you can see some of the criteria in the material that we've released. And so it is highly unlikely that the status quo would fit up against those criteria.
These reforms plugging into the flat keeping, plugging into the RMA, plugging into your idea of a amalgamated super ministry, it feels like if you don't do any one of them, the rest of them are less functional. It sounds like you need to do them all in order to get what you want to work. Do you need to do them all?
No, I'm not sure that's a fair statement. Resource management reform sits by itself and is fundamental to the importance of this country. And you'll see in a couple of weeks' time how it will drive a revolution in the way in which we plan, build our cities, and it will lead to an enormous increase in productivity. So you'll see that. So that sits by itself, and I'm really proud of the work we've done there. Our view is that this is a complement to that and will drive even more value for money out of councils and the way in which local government delivers for ratepayers. It'd be possible to do this without resource management reform in the same way that it's possible to do resource management without doing this. But as a package, I believe it's an attractive, compelling proposition for New Zealanders. The third piece, how central government organises itself to engage with local government. Again, you could do that by itself, but and we're still working our way through that. But it's not a kind of a priori thing that you need to do to make this happen.
Is this consistent with the National Party's previous advocacy for localism and devolution?
Absolutely. I mean, the reality is that we've got two layers that are interacting, often competing against each other and not collaborating and working together. So we're taking, that layer out, and we're making sure that empowerment forms and goes with mayors, as we've talked about. So our view is actually this really cements that power within the local people that are democratically elected, and that is critically important for decision making and takes away just that bureaucracy and frustration. Whether you're a farmer or a householder, it doesn't matter. There's just a frustration that you've got these two groups often competing, and that's not deriving value.
And from a ratepayer's perspective, what's the biggest difference that they would notice under this reform?
Less bureaucracy, more streamlined services, one single layer of governance in the context of making decisions around their local community.
And how does that influence their lives? I mean, a lot of this happens in the background, right? Regional councils are largely invisible to
Well, simplicity drives efficiency, and efficiency drives effectiveness, and that means more stuff will get done. And I think that is the point of which we've acknowledged. Kiwis are frustrated with the status quo around local government, and this government is taking action.
Did you look at it all
Ports
at,
and other assets. I mean, the market-sensitive announcement, some of these ports are listed, you're throwing their future ownership into uncertainty in the coming years. What do you think the impact?
Well, the existing ownership is not changing. So we are proposing to replace the elected layer of regional councillors, but the existing functions, duties, rights and obligations, all of those things, become part of the Board of Mayors or the Combined Territories Board, as we've called it.
Right? Those assets will be up for debate.
Well, as part of the regional reorganisation plans, the regions will engage in a discussion around that, and we're not getting ahead of that. That'll be over two regions, but it is definitely true that regional councils have a range of assets and a range of different things that they do.
Concerns that might affect their commercial viability in those between years.
The fundamentals of what we're announcing don't have an impact on the fundamentals of the financial viability, as you're referencing there.
And when you talk about financial sustainability in those board plans, I mean, are you going to be looking at how they plan to manage those assets? Will there be any sort of encouragement towards so-called asset recycling or sales?
It's not the driver of the reforms we've announced today.
Sorry, can I just clarify just to Tom's earlier question? So there's sort of dozens of democratically elected regional councillors could, face not serving their full term. That's a possibility.
That's a possibility. Yeah.
And you're not worried about that, affecting, faith in local democracy or, those issues?
Well, you either do change or you don't. I mean, the status quo can't remain locked in formaldehyde forever. When the local government reforms were done in 1989, which was the last time we did this seriously, there are consequences to making changes, and the same thing's going to happen with resource management, by the way. That is part and parcel of change, but ultimately it's change for the better, and people will be able to judge whether or not they think what we're proposing is for the better or not. But change is hard, and actually this government was elected to make tough decisions to get the economy going again and to deal with some of the long-term structural drivers that have led to lower living standards than we might otherwise have. And that is the driving ambition of this government, and that's partly why we're doing the reforms today.
But is the government how much more suspicious? Are you going to try and roll Christopher Luxon?
No, definitely not.
Have you had any conversations with your colleagues in the National Party about Christopher Luxon?
No, and today's not about that. Today is about long-term reform for the good of New Zealanders.
Is Luxon the best person to lead the National Party?
He's doing a fantastic job, and he's doing a fantastic job. And as you saw, he's doing a fantastic job. And as you saw of the speech on Sunday, he is doing an outstanding job leading a government made up of three constituent parties, the first multi-party coalition cabinet in New Zealand history. And if I just finish my point, the themes of his speech on Sunday are perfectly aligned with what we're doing today, which is dealing with long-term systemic problems that governments of the past have been unwilling to deal with. And one of the themes of this government is that we are willing to go where governments have not gone before, and where governments have basically put problems in the too hard basket, from education through to resource management reform, through to local government reform, through to building products and earthquake-prone buildings and building liability announced by Chris Penk on Monday. This government is dealing with structural problems that have affected our living standards for too long.
Do you make a commitment to New Zealanders then that Christopher Luxon will remain the Prime Minister through to the...
Sorry, start that again.
Can you make a commitment to New Zealanders for stability and for understanding that Christopher Luxon will remain the Prime Minister through to the...
Yes.
So
Why
you-
do
Minister,
think
given
there's
how
so
much power you're
chatter
giving-
swirling around him? Why do you think there's so much chatter swirling
I don't know. I
around
think people
him?
are interviewing their typewriters,
Do
to
you
be
have
honest.
concerns for national MPs who are the other job on current policy?
Oh, look, we are working hard each and every day to make sure that we put ourselves in the best position to win the next election. Ultimately, that's over to New Zealanders, and the next election is around a year or so away, and that's one of the reasons why we've got to work as hard as possible on reforms like this, and reforms like resource management reform and reforms that you'll see over the next year or so, to make sure that we can put ourselves in the best position to win the next election. But I firmly believe we can and we will win the
Have
election.
you had any conversations with Christopher Luxon in the last few days about these rooms?
You know, I talk to him almost every day.
And how have those conversations gone?
Well, I'm not getting into private conversations that I have with the Prime Minister of New Zealand, but I talk to him almost every day about various different things. I was going to say I saw him last night, but we actually didn't run into each other at the Indian Newslink Awards. But yeah, I talk to him almost every day.
He's doing a fantastic job, but you're not saying that he is the best person to lead the National Party.
No, I did. Well, I think I did. So I'm not trying to avoid answering the question. I'm saying
He's the best person to lead the
he's
National
doing a fantastic job,
He's
and
the
he is
best person to lead the National
correct.
Party. He is the best person.
Absolutely, he's doing a wonderful job as Prime Minister. We're in difficult economic times, as I think everybody knows, and this is the first time we've had a three-way coalition cabinet in New Zealand history, and you know that produces its own challenges and trials and tribulations. But he's doing an excellent job leading a government that is, as I say, firmly focused on long-term structural reform to drive higher living standards, which successive governments have put in the too hard
He was
basket.
just asked in Auckland whether he cared for the National MPs who are probably going to lose their seats on current polling. He said no. What do you think about that?
Sorry, say that again.
He was asked about the National MPs and you know whether he cared, I think, for the ones who would lose their seats on current polling. His answer was you know, he was not particularly bothered by that at the moment.
Well, I suspect you're, I haven't heard the quote, but I suspect you're misquoting him. I mean, obviously we want as many national MPs in Parliament as possible. That is literally why the National Party exists, is to elect as many MPs, whether constituency or list seats, as possible. And our driving focus is on lifting our party vote to make sure we get as many MPs in Parliament as possible. That's literally the reason political parties exist.
Just one final on the reform. Just one on the reform.
Oh,
Just
local
one
government.
on the reform. Sorry.
Welcome back.
Given on voting systems, given you're giving mayors dramatically more power, did you consider at any point in this process changing the ways they are elected? Because many mayors are still elected on first past the post, whatever. On very low turnout, pluralities of the population support them. So they're making these major decisions with maybe 30% of the...
I knew you were going to ask this question, a nerdy question around how they're elected. No, it's fair enough. Fair enough. I'll let Simon answer because he sounds like he's keen.
Well, no, it's fair to say that post the recent elections, we are taking a look at what changes would be worth considering, noting both turnout but also the way in which elections are undertaken. So Minister Goldsmith and I are putting thought to that. We haven't made any decisions. Cabinet hasn't considered anything like that, but we are putting thought to that in terms of what it may look like in terms of future elections.
Are you massively empowering majorities? Or majorities or pluralities here currently can win a mayoralty, but they can still have their voices heard around the council table, the regional council table, if they represent, say, 40% of the population. In this instance, if you're someone who's imminent, who voted against Andy Little, voted against Wayne Brown, who voted against someone like that, your view is not heard at all around the regional council table on your proposal.
Well, I mean, that's democracy in one way. I mean, there are winners and losers. Not everybody gets who they want. I mean, by definition, But
in the current system, they would still have 40% of the regional council, they'd be able to build coalitions.
I mean, there's different options in terms of how that grouping will be composed, and so we're going out to consult on that, and hence why there's a variety of options in terms of what that looks like, and we'll take some feedback from the community and build that into the finalised plan.
Part of the problem you guys have with co-governance over the past 6 years or so has been the erosion of one man, one vote, one person, one vote. Doesn't this do that? Does it erode the principle of one person, one vote?
I don't think that's a fair characterisation. It's a different way of organising our local democracy, and it's a proposal. We're interested in feedback around it, and we remain open to sensible changes on the way through. We put forward our ideas and we put forward our preferred model, but we're open to feedback and see how it goes.
Is there anything more you can tell us about the rates? Because a lot of people at home will be interested in, you mentioned downward pressure, but have you had any kind of other advice on what this could do to rates, or any forecast?
Not in the context of these reforms. That I know people are anxious about it, and Minister Watts might want to talk about the wider work we're doing around local government, but not in the context of this reform. That will be a byproduct of the regional reorganisation plans that we expect to come. and clearly there will be analysis on the way through around the stripping out of cost, which obviously puts downward pressure on rates. But that's a conversation for another day.
Have you read the Australia report that Regional Councils Commission just released this month that says that largely their resourcing their system is fit for purpose?
I haven't read it.
Do you agree with that finding?
Well, I haven't read the report, so I'm not going to comment on a report I haven't read. It only got released a couple of days or so ago. I think it was a bit of a preemptory attempt to get ahead of this, but it was a little bit late because the decision was made a couple of weeks ago.
Can I ask about the tugboat decision as well?
What's that?
The tugboat decision.
Oh, yeah.
in Wellington.
Yes.
Does that put lives at risk on those ferries, and does it risk environmental, carnage?
Yeah, we had a good look at it. There's a couple of things going on there. One is just the sheer costs. So the initial business case from memory was about $80 million, rose to $259 million or $260 million. Very expensive, and ultimately that would have to be recovered from someone. And we had to think about consulting on recovering that from maritime levies. Now, that you might think that's a source of money, but ultimately that's paid by someone, and it would be paid by inter-island ferry users, for example, and it will put upward pressure on ticket prices for using the inter-islander. And at a time when people are worried about the cost of living, we weren't particularly keen on that. But probably the more important factor is the business case showed that it's actually not clear that having a emergency ocean response capability would make a difference. There have been 23 incidents in the last 5 years. All were resolved without having an emergency ocean dedicated response capability. And so when we just weighed up the costs and the benefits, New Zealanders could be paying a lot for something that wouldn't actually make a difference. And when you just do the simple analysis, we decided it wasn't worth it.
Back to the council.
You said you were keeping the MMA Vision contract until February next year.
Yes.
Why is it not commercially viable to maintain it for longer, given the new ferries?
Well, that was a short-term interim solution where we had to think about the procuring a dedicated EORC, and we decided not to.
Why
So.
not kill the contract now, though? Are you keeping it in place over the summer just in case?
I can't actually remember exactly what we're doing there. I have to check the facts on that. I think there is some complexity to exactly how that works, but I can come back to you on that.
Back to the councils.
Yeah, we'll take one more, then I've got another minute.
These reforms would work best if eventually we end up with a lot more unitary authorities. Democratically, obviously, you want to push them there democratically, but these reforms would work best if that is where we eventually end up.
I think that's a fair summation of the situation.
As a Wellington MP, you would like that in Wellington?
Well, speaking with my Wellington MP hat on, I thought it was interesting that both Porirua and local and Hutt City put it to the vote in their, they put referenda to the vote on that issue during the last local body elections a few months ago, and both passed. And certainly the feedback I get from Wellington councils and mayors and actually, frankly, Wellington regional ratepayers is that having Lower Hutt and Upper Hutt and Porirua and Wellington City is pretty nuts. So if this proposal goes ahead, Wellington will get the chance to do what they have not done for quite a long time and seize the opportunity for growth. And I look forward to that happening. But I'm not holding my breath.
The exact quote of the question which the Prime Minister was just asked was, you don't hold any concerns for those MPs who on the current polling numbers, if an election was held today, would lose their jobs. You're not worried about them. I
think we've dealt with all the ephemera related to the announcement today.
Are you worried? Because you'd be one of them.
I've got a 3:15 to talk about resource management reform, so we better get to that. Hey, thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.